The first thing Lyra Fenn noticed was not the moon crown. It was the smell. Burned winter mint. Bitter metal. Something faintly sweet beneath both. None of it belonged inside the Grand Moon Hall. At the center of the chamber, Serena Vale stood before the moon altar in a white ceremonial gown, while hundreds of pack lords watched from the stone galleries. Moon priests formed a silver-robed circle around her. Beyond the altar stood Alpha King Dorian Kale, broad-shouldered and motionless, one hand near the ceremonial blade at his belt. No one was watching Lyra. Omega assistants were meant to carry medicine, replace incense, clean ritual tools, and disappear before anyone important remembered their names. Lyra had become very good at being overlooked, but overlooked people saw things. Serena raised both hands toward the crown. Lyra saw a dark streak along the inner curve of one silver fang. Her stomach tightened. Wait. The ceremonial chant swallowed her voice. Serena's fingers moved closer. Lyra stepped away from the apothecary table. Wait. A guard blocked her path. Back. Something is wrong with the crown. Return to your station. Lyra caught the scent again. Stronger now. Don't let her touch it. The chant faltered. Several nobles turned. Serena looked toward Lyra, startled, but her fingertips were already on the silver rim. Too late. Her body went rigid. A small sound escaped her. Then blood appeared in the center of her palm. Serena collapsed. Dorian moved before anyone else. He caught her before her head struck the altar. The hall erupted. Priests shouted. Guards drew steel. Lyra shoved past the guard. She needs a healer. We have healers. Then why are they standing there? She tore free and dropped beside Serena. Dorian's gaze cut toward her. Her hand, Lyra said. He shifted Serena enough for her to see. The cut was shallow. The blood was wrong, darkening too quickly around the edges. Lyra reached for Serena's wrist. Dorian caught her hand. What are you doing? Checking her pulse. Lyra met his eyes. If I meant to hurt her, Your Majesty, I chose a strange moment to start pretending to save her. Something changed in his expression. Not trust. Attention. He released her. Serena's pulse fluttered beneath Lyra's fingers. Get the crown away from her. A priest hesitated. Dorian nodded. The crown was lifted. Serena sucked in a sharp breath. Lyra smelled wintermint again. Not from Serena. From the crown. There. Inside the silver fang. Royal Apothecary Master Corvin stepped forward and examined the dark stain. Then his eyes moved toward Lyra. Too quickly. Search her. 2 guards seized her. One ripped the leather satchel from her shoulder and emptied it onto the stone. Bandages. Yarrow. A bone needle. 3 tinctures. And 1 black glass vial. A lirafrose. She had never seen it before. Corvin uncorked it with a cloth. Burned wintermint. Metal. Sweet sap. The room went silent. The same substance, Corvin said. No. Murmurs raced through the galleries. Omega. Poison. Luna. Dorian rose. Is that your satchel? Yes. Are those your supplies? Everything except that vial. Corvin gave a cold breath. Convenient. Lyra turned on him. You examined the crown before the ceremony. So did others. And you're the first person who knew where to look in my bag. Dorian stepped between them. Enough. The hall obeyed. Lyra forced herself to face him. If I wanted Serena dead, why would I warn everyone before she touched the crown? For 1 second, she thought he might believe her. Then he said, If you wanted to appear innocent afterward, that is exactly what you would do. The words hurt because they made sense. A growl rolled through the hall. Every head turned. Ash entered through the western arch. The royal wolf was enormous, silver gray, his golden eyes fixed ahead. Guards moved aside. Ash ignored Serena, ignored Dorian, then looked directly at Lyra. Someone whispered, He knows. Lyra stood still. Ash walked toward her, then past her. He went straight to the moon crown. His hackles rose. A violent snarl shook the room. Ash struck the crown with one paw, clamped his jaws around one silver fang ornament, and twisted. Metal screamed. The fang snapped free. Ash lifted the broken piece and turned toward Lyra. Dorian's face changed. The evidence pointed at her. His royal wolf pointed somewhere else. "Take her below," Dorian ordered. "Your Majesty, chain the Omega." The guards dragged Lyra from the hall. She did not beg. The vial had been planted. The crown had been altered. Whoever had done both had known exactly when everyone would be looking at her. An hour later, iron closed around her wrists, inside a cell beneath the eastern tower. The corridor fell silent. Then claws scraped slowly across stone. Lyra raised her head. Ash stood beyond the bars. The royal wolf lowered his massive head and pushed something through the gap. The broken silver fang. It stopped at Lyra's feet. Ash lay down outside her cell and refused to leave. Lyra stared at the piece and understood one thing. Ash had not brought it to accuse her. Ash did not move. Lyra waited for the royal wolf to rise, to carry the silver fang back to Dorian, to do anything that made sense. Instead, he stayed across the corridor stones, golden eyes fixed on her through the bars. The broken piece of the moon crown lay near Lyra's boot. She crouched as far as the chain allowed and picked it up. Cold silver, jagged edge, dark residue along the inner groove. Lyra brought it close to her nose. Burned wintermint was still there, but weaker now. Beneath it was something earthy and bitter. Moonroot. Her pulse quickened. Moonroot was not poisonous by itself. Apothecaries used it to dull strong scents in fever remedies and battlefield salves. In the royal stores, it was restricted because it could hide almost anything beneath it. Someone had not simply poisoned the crown. Someone had tried to hide the poison from wolves. Lyra turned the silver fang in the torchlight. Near the broken edge, caught inside a carved channel, was a reddish-brown trace. Not Serena's blood. Du Alt. She rubbed it carefully with her thumb and smelled again. Iron, salt, and something sharper, something she had encountered while preparing ceremonial tinctures for the king's physicians. Oath blood catalyst. Lyra went still. The substance was used in tiny quantities during alpha-binding rituals because it reacted to alpha blood. Harmless when stored properly. Dangerous when combined with the wrong compounds. She looked at Ash. "You knew this was wrong." The wolf's ears shifted. "But you don't know why." Ash remained silent. Lyra stared at the silver fang again. Serena had touched the crown with bare hands. The poison had entered through the small ritual cut in her palm, enough to make her collapse. But the lunar choosing was not supposed to end there. During the binding, Dorian would cut his own palm, place his hand over Serena's, and touch the moon crown while the oath was spoken. His blood would contact the same silver, the same poison. Except alpha blood would activate it. Lyra's breath stopped. She wasn't the one they meant to kill. Ash lifted his head. Footsteps sounded beyond the corridor. Ash rose before Lyra saw him. Dorian appeared at the end of the passage, with Captain Rowan Thorne behind him. The Alpha King's expression hardened when he saw his wolf outside Lyra's cell. Ash. The wolf did not move toward him. Dorian's eyes dropped to the fragment in Lyra's hand. "How did you get that?" He brought it. Lyra stood. The chain between her wrists clicked. "If you finish the binding with that crown, you'll die." Rowan stepped forward. "Careful." Dorian lifted one hand, stopping him. "What did you find?" The question surprised her, not because he believed her, because he was asking. Lyra held the silver fang toward the bars. Moonroot. It masks scent. Whoever altered this crown knew a royal wolf might inspect it. Dorian's jaw tightened, and, underneath it, Something designed to react with alpha oath blood. Silence. Dorian looked at Ash. The wolf gave a low sound. You expect me to believe the poison in your satchel was planted, the crown was altered, and the true target was me? No, Lyra, het is Hase. I expect you to believe chemistry. If Serena was only collateral damage, why poison her? Because she had to touch the crown first. Lyra stepped closer to the bars. The dose that reached her was small, enough to collapse her, enough to make the ceremony look attacked. And mine would not have been small. Dorian's eyes sharpened. During the binding, your blood touches the crown. If I'm right, whatever is on this silver would activate faster in you. If you're right. If I'm wrong, execute me tomorrow. Rowan looked at her sharply. But if I'm right and you complete that ritual tonight, there may not be a tomorrow for either of us. For the first time, something other than suspicion crossed Dorian's face. Calculation. He reached through the bars. Give me the fragment. Lyra hesitated. Ash growled. The royal wolf moved between Dorian's hand and the bars. Rowan whispered, He's protecting her. No, Lyra said. She looked at the fang in her palm. He's protecting this. Dorian slowly withdrew his hand. A door slammed open somewhere above them. Running footsteps. A healer appeared at the stairwell. Breathless. Your Majesty. Lady Serena is awake. Dorian left immediately. Rowan gave Lyra one unreadable look before following. Ash stayed. Several minutes passed before the healer returned with a guard. He stopped outside Lyra's cell. Lady Serena asked for you. Lyra frowned. Why? The healer looked unsettled. Because the first thing she said after waking was, Where is the Omega girl? He paused. The corridor seemed suddenly much colder. And then she said, She tried to warn me. The guard removed the chain from Lyra's wrists but did not unlock the iron collar around her neck. That stays, he said. Lyra rubbed the red marks on her skin. Comforting. Ash walked beside her as she was escorted from the eastern cells to the royal infirmary. No one tried to separate them. After what had happened in the Moon Hall, even the guards seemed uncertain whether the wolf was protecting a prisoner or escorting evidence. Serena Vale was awake when Lyra entered. She looked smaller, without the white ceremonial cloak and silver ornaments. Her face was pale, her dark hair loose across the pillow, one hand wrapped in clean linen. Lady Callista Vale stood near the window, composed in deep blue, while two healers hovered nearby. Dorian was beside the bed. His eyes went first to Lyra, then to the collar. You brought her in chains? Serena asked. Captain Rowan answered before Dorian could. She remains under investigation. Serena looked at Lyra. She tried to stop me. Silence settled across the room. I heard her. Serena continued. Before I touched the crown, she told them something was wrong. Callista's expression barely shifted. That does not explain the vial in her satchel, she said gently. No, Lyra replied. It explains why the vial needed to be there. Dorian watched her. Serena frowned. What do you mean? Someone wanted the court to see a guilty Omega before anyone had time to ask what happened to the crown. Lyra stepped closer to the bed. May I see your hand? Serena offered it without hesitation. That mattered more than Lyra wanted it to. She loosened the linen and examined the ritual cut. The skin around it was irritated, but the dark discoloration had faded. You received a small dose, Lyra said. Enough to collapse you, not enough to kill you. Callista's gaze sharpened. You sound certain. I'm certain the crown was altered. Dorian placed the broken silver fang on the bedside table. Ash brought this to her cell. For the first time, Callista looked directly at the fragment. Only for a heartbeat. Lyra noticed. Dorian did too. The substance on the silver reacts with alpha oath blood, he said. If Lyra's analysis is correct, Serena was not the intended target. Serena looked at him. You were. Dorian gave no answer. He did not need to. Later, after Serena was ordered to rest, Lyra expected to be returned underground. Instead, Dorian led her to a narrow chamber beside the royal archive. 2 guards remained outside. The collar stayed on. On the table lay the moon crown, sealed beneath a glass cover. "You are not free," Dorian said. "I noticed. You are also the only person who identified the contamination before Serena collapsed." Lyra looked at the crown. "So I'm a prisoner with a job. For now." That sounds almost like a promotion. A flicker touched his mouth and disappeared. "Are you always this difficult?" "Only when people chain me before asking questions." Dorian actually looked away for a moment, not embarrassed. Annoyed, perhaps, that she had earned the point. He lifted the glass. "Tell me what you need." That was the first real shift. Not trust. Excess. Lyra spent the next hour examining the crown under better light. The dark residue had been cleaned away, but the damaged setting told its own story. She compared the broken fang Ash had taken with the remaining silver ornaments. The difference was tiny, but it was there. "This piece is newer." Dorian leaned closer. "How can you tell? The old silver has moon salt embedded in the grooves. It builds up after repeated ritual use. This one doesn't." "You're saying someone replaced part of the crown recently?" She turned the fang over, and badly enough that the joint cracked when Ash pulled it. Dorian called for the crown maintenance records. Captain Rowan brought them himself. He was a hard-faced man in his early 40s, with a soldier's stillness and a scar near his right eyebrow. He placed 3 leather ledgers on the table. "No repairs were authorized this season," Rowan said. Lyra opened the newest ledger. No repairs were recorded. Rowan's eyes narrowed. She traced the supply entries with one finger. Silver polish, moon salt, ceremonial oil. Then she stopped. A quantity of royal silver had been withdrawn 6 days earlier, enough to replace 1 crown ornament. The authorization line bore a black wax mark, a wolf crossed by a sword. Dorian went very still. Lyra looked at Rowan. "What is that?" Rowan did not answer immediately. Dorian did. His command seal. The room changed. Rowan stared at the ledger as if he had never seen it before. "I did not authorize this." Lyra looked from the seal to his face. Maybe he was lying. Maybe he was not. But one thing was suddenly clear. Whoever had altered the moon crown had done more than hide poison. They had left behind a trail, and that trail led directly to the man Dorian trusted to guard his life, exactly as the vial in Lyra's satchel had led straight to her first. The first thing Dorian did was order Captain Rowan confined to his quarters. The second was refuse to call it an arrest. "Until we know whether the seal was stolen, copied, or used by you," Dorian said, "you remain under guard." Rowan's jaw tightened. "Understood." Lyra watched him leave the archive, with 2 soldiers at his back. "He didn't do it." Dorian turned toward her. "You decided that quickly." "No. Whoever did this decided it too cleanly." She tapped the ledger. "My vial was in my satchel. His seal is on the silver order. Both pieces of evidence point directly at the person they accuse. You think that makes them false?" "I think competent traitors survive by creating distance between themselves and the crime." Dorian looked down at the black wax mark. "For a prisoner, you are very comfortable criticizing my investigation. For a king, you are very comfortable repeating the mistake that put me in chains." His eyes lifted. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Dorian closed the ledger. "Show me what I'm missing." They went to the Crown Workshop beneath the Western Tower. The door had been forced. Inside, drawers were overturned, tools scattered, and silver dust glittered across the floor. A workbench had been burned badly enough to blacken the stone wall behind it. Lyra stepped around the debris. "Someone wanted us to see destruction." Dorian crouched beside a broken cabinet. "Isn't that usually why people destroy things? Not like this." She pointed to a row of hanging tools. The expensive ones are still here. No theft, no panic. Whoever came knew exactly what mattered. At the burned workbench, Lyra found the corner of a ledger page trapped beneath a melted wax tray. Most of the writing was gone. She held it near the window. Nothing. Dorian took it. Then why keep it? Because paper remembers pressure. She laid the ruined sheet over a clean parchment and rubbed charcoal lightly across it. Indented lines emerged. Ardate, a quantity of royal silver, and one partial word, Val. Dorian's expression sharpened. Before either could speak, bells rang from the east wing. Not ceremonial bells. Alarm. A guard burst through the workshop door. Your Majesty, Lady Serena is missing. Lady Callista arrived moments later, pale but composed, demanding answers. She gripped Dorian's arm and whispered that Rowan knew every private corridor Serena used. Lyra noticed how carefully she said his name. They ran. Serena's chamber was empty. One maid lay unconscious near the wardrobe. Another had been found asleep outside the door. Lyra knelt beside the maid and smelled her breath. Drowsily, Dorian looked toward the corridor. Seal the gates. Lyra was already moving. Wait. She followed the scent past Serena's chamber, down a servant's stair, and through a laundry passage rarely used by nobles. Dorian caught up. You can track it? I can track what they spilled. A faint smear of oil darkened one corner of the stone floor. Sleeping herbs mixed with lamp grease. The trail led to a service door, opening behind the kitchens. Outside, two masked guards were dragging Serena toward a covered wagon. Lyra did not wait for orders. She grabbed a brass warming pan from beside the door, dumped its coals into a basket of drying bitter leaf, and kicked the basket into the courtyard. White smoke exploded upward. The masked men coughed and stumbled. One released Serena. Lyra ran through the smoke, caught Serena around the waist, and pulled her behind a stone trough. A blodfläschel. Dorian struck the attacker before it reached them. The second man tried to run. Royal guards poured into the courtyard and brought him down. Minutes later, Serena was awake enough to breathe on her own. Lyra checked her pulse. Dorian stood above them, sword in hand, smoke curling around his shoulders. You could have waited for me. Lyra looked up. She couldn't. That answer stopped him. One of the captured men groaned. A guard tore a bronze token from beneath his cloak and handed it to Dorian. The insignia was a wolf crossed by a sword. Rowan's command mark. Dorian stared at it. Again, he said. Lyra took the token. It was real, heavy, properly cast. Ash appeared through the kitchen arch and came directly to her. She held the token near his muzzle. The royal wolf sniffed once. Nothing. No growl. No raised hackles. Lyra turned it over. It's genuine. Dorian's voice hardened. Then Rowan supplied them. No. She looked toward the unconscious attacker. The token is real. The scent is wrong. Dorian frowned. Lyra held up the bronze piece. If Rowan had handled this recently, Ash would know his scent. Someone used an authentic token without Rowan touching it. The courtyard fell quiet. Lyra looked at the token, then remembered the vial in her satchel, the command seal in the ledger, the burned workshop. Every answer had been waiting exactly where investigators would look. She raised her eyes to Dorian. Whoever did this isn't hiding from the investigation. His face changed as he understood. Lyra closed her fingers around the token. They're controlling it. The courtyard had barely cleared when Lyra asked for the broken silver fang again. Dorian brought her back to the restricted archive chamber, this time without the iron collar. He did not explain the change. Lyra noticed anyway. The moon crown rested beneath glass. Beside it lay Rowan's token, the burned ledger fragment, and the black vial taken from her satchel. 3 pieces of evidence. 3 accusations. 3 trails that had been too easy to follow. Lyra placed the silver fang beneath a magnifying lens. If the same person planted all of this, Dorian said. They wanted us moving in circles. No. Lyra adjusted the lamp. They wanted us moving in a direction. He watched her scrape, a thread of residue from the inner groove. Toward Droven? Toward whoever is useful to blame next. She mixed the residue with a drop of diluted iron solution. The liquid remained clear. Then she added a single drop of preserved Alpha Oath blood from the ceremonial testing cabinet. The solution turned black. Dorian's expression hardened. Lyra stared at the glass dish. There. What does it mean? The compound is dormant until it meets alpha blood. She looked at him. Serena was never the target. Dorian said nothing. Lyra continued. The cut in her palm exposed her to enough poison to collapse her. But during the binding, you would have cut your hand, taken hers, and touched the crown together. The poison would have activated in me. Fast. How fast? Lyra hesitated. Fast enough that the ceremony might have ended before anyone understood you were dying. Silence filled the room. For the first time since Lyra had met him, Dorian looked less like a king weighing danger, and more like a man seeing the shape of his own death. Then his control returned. If someone wanted me dead, why build all of this around Serena? That is the part I don't understand. A voice came from the doorway. Perhaps because killing a king is only useful if you know what happens after. Lady Callista Vale entered without hurry. She had changed from the blue gown she wore earlier into dark grey court dress. Nothing about her suggested panic, though her niece had nearly been kidnapped less than an hour ago. Dorian's eyes narrowed. Explain. Callista folded her hands. The Emergency Succession Act. Lyra looked at Dorian. He went still. Callista continued. If an Alpha King dies during a Luna binding before producing an heir, the chosen Luna assumes temporary royal authority until succession is stabilized. Serena, Lyra said. Yes. Callista's voice remained calm, and because she would not yet be fully bound, experienced, or politically established, her legal guardian would act as principal regent. Lyra looked at her. You. For the first time, Callista smiled without warmth. Below. Dorian's expression revealed nothing. Leave us. Callista bowed. As you command. She turned and walked out. Lyra waited until the door closed. That was convenient. Dorian looked at her. What was? She gave us the motive before we asked. She gave us a law that puts her one death away from controlling the kingdom. You think that makes her guilty? No. Lyra picked up the burned ledger fragment. I think it makes her worth investigating. Dorian moved to the shelves and pulled down a thick volume bound in black leather. He opened it to a marked section. Emergency Succession Act. Lyra read the signatures. Her eyes stopped at the bottom. Dorian Kale. She looked up. You signed it. I did. Why? His jaw tightened. Because 12 years ago my uncle died without an heir, and 6 houses tried to claim the throne before his body was cold. He closed the book. 3 months of war. Villages burned. Pack alliances collapsed. Thousands died because no one knew who had authority. Lyra said nothing. I wrote the act so that could never happen again, and now someone may be using it to kill you. Yes. There was no defensiveness in the answer. That surprised her. Dorian looked at the law as if it had become something unfamiliar. I thought clear rules made a kingdom safer. They do. Lyra leaned against the table. Until someone learns how to weaponize them. His gaze moved to her. You speak as if you've seen that before. She almost refused. Then she thought of the chain around her wrists. My father was accused of stealing medicine from an Alpha household. Dorian stayed quiet. The records were clean. Witnesses agreed. The law was clear. What happened? He was exiled. Lyra looked at the black vial. 2 years later, one of the witnesses admitted he had been paid. It changed nothing. My father was already dead. Dorian's face shifted. I'm sorry. I don't need sorrow. What do you need? She met his eyes. A king who understands that evidence can be manufactured. The words stayed between them. Dorian looked back at the law he had signed. Then, at Lyra. I cannot undo what happened to your father. No. And I cannot ask you to trust me because I wear a crown. No. He stepped closer. Then don't trust the crown. Lyra waited. Dorian's voice lowered. Trust what I do next. Lyra wanted to believe him. That frightened her more than poison, because trust was the wound she had never learned how to treat. Outside the archive, somewhere deep in the palace, Ash began to growl. Ash's growl did not stop. It came from the corridor, beyond the archive, low and continuous, the sound of an animal that had found danger, but could not yet name it. Dorian opened the door. 3 royal guards stood outside. Behind them was Master Corvin, and behind Corvin, 2 servants carried a wooden chest Lyra recognized immediately. Her chest, the one from her quarters. Dorian's expression hardened. What is this? Corvin bowed. Evidence discovered during a lawful search. Lyra felt cold before the lid even opened. Inside lay bundles of dried moonroot, 3 sealed vials of black resin, and a folded packet of parchment tied with gray thread. None of it belonged to her. Corvin lifted the packet. Letters discussing an Omega uprising 12 years ago. Lyra stared at the handwriting. Her mother's handwriting. For the first time, she had no answer. Dorian looked at her. You recognize it? Yes. Is it yours? No. Your mother's? Lyra swallowed. Yes. Callista appeared at the far end of the corridor, as if summoned by the silence. She stopped when she saw the chest. What happened? Corvin explained. Callista did not accuse Lyra. That made Lyra distrust her more. Instead, Callista looked at Dorian with quiet concern. If the girl is innocent, an investigation will clear her. Lyra almost laughed. The sentence was perfect, reasonable, merciful, and exactly what had destroyed her father. Dorian picked up one of the letters. The wax was old, the paper genuine, the handwriting unmistakable. Where did these come from? He asked. Lyra's voice was flat. Not from me. That isn't what I asked. I don't know. He opened another sheet. The letter described gathering herbs that could weaken, alpha scent tracking. Another listed names connected to a failed Omega protest. Everything looked real because part of it was real. That was the genius of it. Dorian turned toward the guards. Leave us. Corvin hesitated. Your Majesty. Now. The corridor emptied, except for Callista. Dorian looked at her. You too? She inclined her head. Of course. Before leaving, Callista met Lyra's eyes. Only once. No triumph, no smile, nothing. That frightened Lyra more than either would have. The door closed. Dorian placed the letter on the table. Tell me what I should believe. Lyra stared at him. You said not to trust the crown. I said to trust what I did next. And this is it? His jaw tightened. I cannot ignore evidence, because I want you to be innocent. Want? That is not what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. Lyra stepped closer. The vial was planted. Rowan's seal was used. Serena was taken by men carrying his token. Every time we followed the obvious evidence, it was false. And now evidence from your mother's past appears in your rooms. Yes, real evidence. Real paper. Real handwriting. That does not make the accusation real. Dorian looked away for half a second. It was enough. Lyra understood. He did not believe she was guilty, but he did not believe her enough to risk being wrong. That hurt more. Until I know the truth, he said. You return to custody. Lyra went still. No. The word surprised even her. Dorian's eyes returned to her. You are under royal order. You told me to trust what you did next. He said nothing. You knew what that meant to me. Lyra, you knew. His face changed, but too late. The guards returned when he called. The second time iron closed around Lyra's wrists. She did not look at them. She looked only at Dorian. He could not hold her gaze. That was answer enough. Hours later, Serena came to the cell alone. "I know how they got the letters," she whispered. Lyra lifted her head. Serena knelt beyond the bars. "Years ago, after the Omega protests, Callista kept records from several investigations. Personal effects, too. Boxes of them. My mother's? I saw her name once." Lyra's anger became suddenly cold. So she had access. Yes. To handwriting. History. Everything needed to make a lie look inherited. Serena reached through the bars. "There is a service passage behind the old shrine. I can get you out." Lyra stared at her. "If I run, they will call it proof. If you stay, Callista will decide what proof exists." That was true. Ash appeared at the corridor turn. The royal wolf looked from Serena to Lyra, then to the lock. Lyra closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, the decision was made. She did not intend to disappear into the hills, and hope innocence found her. Before Serena opened the cell, Lyra made her promise one thing. They would follow the evidence backward. The moon route. The replacement silver. The forged authorizations every object had come from somewhere. Whoever controlled the palace could plant evidence inside it. Outside the palace, supply routes left footprints. Serena knew of an abandoned moon foundry beyond the ridge where Callista's household had once commissioned silver. It was enough to begin. Serena stole the key from a sleeping guard. The chain fell. They moved through the shrine passage beneath the palace, Ash leading them into darkness. An hour later, Dorian entered the empty cell. On the floor lay the chain. Beside it, written in charcoal across the stone, were 12 words. "Find who benefits when every piece of evidence points exactly where they want you to look." Lyra had spent most of her life learning how to move through places that did not belong to her. Palace kitchens, apothecary stores, noble corridors, rooms where Omegas were expected to lower their eyes and remember nothing. The abandoned moon foundry was different. It belonged to no one now. The building crouched beneath the eastern ridge like a dead animal, its stone walls blackened by old furnace smoke. Broken windows reflected the last gray light of evening. Rusted chains hung beside the loading doors, stirring whenever the wind crossed the yard. Serena pulled her cloak tighter. "You're sure this is the place?" "No," Lyra said. "I'm sure the silver came from somewhere. This is the first place that makes sense." Ash moved ahead of them, nose low. He stopped beside a collapsed cart. Lyra crouched. Moonroot. The scent was faint, nearly buried beneath wet earth and old ash, but unmistakable. She looked at Serena. "We're close." They entered through a side door hanging from one hinge. Inside, the foundry smelled of dust, iron, and cold stone. Empty molds lined the walls. A furnace large enough to swallow a man stood silent at the center. Lyra found the records room behind it. Most of the shelves had been cleared. One drawer had not. Serena held the lamp, while Lyra forced it open with a broken chisel. Inside lay 3 ledgers. The first contained ordinary commissions. The second was blank. The third carried no title at all. Lyra opened it. Payments, dates, weights of royal silver. Her finger stopped. 6 days before the lunar choosing. 1 silver fang ornament. 1 vial refined moonroot. 1 private delivery to the palace. Serena whispered, "Who signed it?" Lyra turned the page. A small wax impression remained near the bottom, a rose crossed by 3 thorns. Serena's face drained of color. "My aunt's private seal." Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Serena sat down hard on a wooden crate. "She raised me." Lyra closed the ledger carefully. Serena laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "She taught me how to bow before I could read, how to walk into a room and know who mattered, which fork to use, which lord never forgave an insult, which smile meant yes, and which meant I will destroy you later." Her hands tightened in her lap. She told me everything she did was preparing me to become Luna. Lyra watched her. Did you want to? Serena looked toward the dead furnace. I don't know if anyone ever asked. She reached into her cloak and removed a small glass vial. Lyra frowned. What is that? My tonic. Callista made me drink it every morning for 3 months before the choosing. She said it calmed my nerves. Lyra uncorked it. The scent hit immediately. Mown lavender, bitter leaf, and something underneath. She tipped 1 drop onto her finger. Memory root. Her stomach tightened. This doesn't calm nerves. Serena looked up. What does it do? In small doses, makes time feel uneven, blurs details, makes scent memory unreliable. Serena went very still. I kept forgetting conversations. Lyra recorked the vial. She wasn't preparing you to rule. The truth was worse. She was preparing you not to remember. Serena stared at the bottle in her hand. She raised me. Lyra moved closer. That doesn't mean she owned you. Serena's eyes shone, but she did not cry. Instead, she stood. Then, let's finish this. They searched until darkness filled the windows. Behind a false panel beneath the records desk, Lyra found payment receipts bearing Callista's seal. In a locked cabinet, Serena discovered bundles of moonroot packed for transport. Beneath them lay a parchment draft. Lyra read it twice, then a 3rd time. Emergency Regency Proclamation. Serena Vale, Luna Regent, Lady Callista Vale, Principal Guardian of the Realm. Dated 2 days before the Luna choosing, before Serena collapsed, before anyone should have known the throne might become vacant. Serena whispered, That's enough. Almost. A sound came from the doorway. Metal scraping stone. Ash growled. A thin man stood there, 1 hand gripping the frame. Silver burns covered his fingers. Serena stepped back. Lyra recognized him from palace records. The royal smith, his eyes filled with fear. She said no one would find me. Callista? He nodded. She ordered the replacement fang, said it was for structural repair. Then her men brought the coating. I refused to apply it. What happened? They did it themselves. Boots sounded outside. Many. The smith's face collapsed. They found me. Lyra grabbed the ledger. Back exit? He pointed toward the furnace corridor. Too late. Men flooded the foundry. Serena seized Lyra's arm. Take the proof. Run. And leave you? If they want me alive, I can buy you time. Lyra looked at the guards closing in. Then, at Serena. No. Lyra. No more women. Being used so someone else can win. Ash lunged. A guard swung a chain. Lyra shouted, Ash, go! The wolf hesitated. Go. Ash vanished through a shattered window, with a piece of Serena's torn cloak caught between his teeth. The ledger was ripped from Lyra's hands. Someone struck her behind the knees. She hit the floor beside Serena. As iron closed around her wrists again, Lyra saw Callista's seal on the Regency proclamation lying inches away. Proof existed now. Real, physical, impossible to dismiss. The problem was surviving long enough to make anyone hear it. Callista returned to the capital before dawn. By noon, the story was already everywhere. The Omega prisoner had escaped royal custody. She had abducted Serena Vale, stolen restricted Regency documents, and fled east with the royal wolf. Captain Rowan's confinement was proof of a wider conspiracy. Lady Callista, pale with exhaustion and grief, stood before the emergency council and asked for only one thing: stability. Lyra heard none of that directly. She heard it from the guards transporting her beneath the moon hall. They say you drugged the Luna. They say you planned the whole thing. They say the king trusted you. That last one hurt most. Serena walked beside her in separate chains, jaw set, refusing to answer anyone. Callista had kept the royal smith alive. She needed him frightened, not dead. The ledger and regency proclamation had been taken. Every piece of proof was now in her hands. Once again, truth existed. Once again, someone else controlled who was allowed to see it. Above them, bells began to ring. Serena stopped. No. Lyra looked at her. What? The binding bells. A guard shoved Serena forward. Lyra's pulse jumped. They're holding the ceremony today? Emergency order, the guard said. The kingdom needs a Luna. Callista had moved faster than Lyra expected, not because she was afraid, because the plan had entered its final stage. At the palace, Dorian stood before the emergency council with Ash at his side. The wolf had returned alone at sunrise, filthy from the road. A strip of Serena's torn cloak caught between his teeth. Dorian had understood immediately. Lyra had found Serena. Something had happened at the foundry, and Ash had chosen to leave them only because Lyra had ordered him to. Callista addressed the council calmly, whatever the Omega intended. We cannot allow the kingdom to fracture while we chase fugitives. They are not fugitives, Dorian said. Several lords shifted. Callista's face remained composed. Then, where are they? Dorian had no answer. That was the trap. Evidence still favored Callista. War reports arrived from the northern border before midday. 2 rival packs had moved scouts toward royal territory. Rumors of Dorian's poisoning had already spread beyond the capital. The council demanded the Luna binding continue. Delay meant weakness. Weakness invited challenge. Dorian agreed to appear. Before leaving the council chamber, Dorian remembered the charcoal words on the cell floor. Find who benefits. Callista had benefited from every accusation, every delay, every frightened lord demanding order. Suspicion was no longer enough. He needed proof. But he did not agree, because he trusted Callista. He agreed because he needed her close. Below the hole, Serena stared at the chains around her wrists. My aunt will need me upstairs. Eventually. She won't bring us both. No. Lyra studied the old ritual corridor around them. Moon priests had used these tunnels for centuries. The stones were damp, but the wall beside Serena held a narrow groove cut into the mortar. Serena followed her gaze. Ritual passage. You know where it goes? Behind the Luna alcove. Lyra looked at the guard. Then, at the oil lamp hanging beside him. She smiled. The guard frowned. What? Lyra kicked the lamp. Oil spilled across the floor. The flame died. Darkness swallowed the corridor. Serena moved instantly. She drove her shoulder into one guard, while Lyra caught the other's wrist and slammed his hand against the wall until the keys fell. By the time another torch appeared at the far end, both women were inside the passage. They ran. Above them, the second binding ceremony began. Dorian stood before a replacement moon crown. Serena's place at the altar remained empty. Callista claimed she would arrive momentarily. High Seer Eveline looked uneasy. Dorian looked at the ceremonial blade. It was not the same knife used 3 nights earlier. He noticed the difference. Too late to understand it. Callista stepped closer. Your Majesty, the council is watching. Sowangyi. He took the blade. Beneath the hall, Lyra smelled it before she saw the light from the Luna alcove. Burned wintermint. Moonrot. Her blood went cold. The poison isn't on the crown. Serena turned. What? The blade. They ran harder. Dorian drew the ceremonial edge across his palm. Blood welled instantly. The moon hall fell silent. Callista's eyes fixed on the red line across his skin, waiting. Lyra burst through the Luna alcove doors. Every lord in the chamber turned toward the chained Omega, who had supposedly kidnapped the missing Luna. Guards reached for weapons. Lyra saw Dorian's bleeding hand, saw the blade, Saf Callista, and understood they had arrived seconds too late. Don't touch the crown, she shouted. Dorian looked at her. Blood was already running down his wrist, and this time, Everyone in the Moon Hall believed Lyra was the traitor. Blood slid from Dorian's palm and struck the altar stone. One drop, then another. "Seize her!" someone shouted. Guards moved toward Lyra. Dorian raised his uninjured hand. "Stop." The command cracked through the chamber. Everyone froze completely. Lyra stood at the edge of the lunar alcove, wrists still chained. Serena beside her. Dorian looked at Lyra. "You said the blade?" "Yes." "Prove it." Callista stepped forward. "Your Majesty, she is an escaped prisoner. And yet, she came back to finish what she started." Serena's voice cut across the hall. "No." Every head turned. She stepped beside Lyra. "My aunt lied." Callista went pale for the first time. "Serena, no more." Dorian set the ceremonial blade on the altar. Lyra approached slowly. A guard unlocked her chains at his order. She took the blade with a cloth and brought it near her face. "Burned wintermint. Moonroot. The same scent. Moonroot is masking the poison," she said. "The same masking agent used on the first crown fragment." Master Corvin pushed forward. "That proves nothing. Moonroot is common. Not in royal ritual stores." Lyra looked at him. "And not mixed with alpha oath. Blood catalyst." She scraped residue from the blade into a small silver dish. "Bring testing blood." Dorian nodded to a healer. A sealed vial of preserved alpha blood was brought from the ritual cabinet. Lyra added one drop. The residue turned black. Dorian looked at the stain. "The same reaction?" "The same." Callista lifted her chin. She could have prepared that blade herself. "I was chained beneath the hole. You escaped after the blade was already here." Callista opened her mouth. Serena spoke first. "And I can prove the rest." She pulled a folded parchment from inside her gown. Callista's eyes widened. Lyra had not known Serena still had it. "The Regency Proclamation," Serena said. She handed it to Dorian. "Written before the lunar choosing. Before I collapsed. Before anyone should have expected the throne to become vacant." Dorian read the date. The hall shifted. "A draft contingency. Nothing more. Then explain your seal on the Moon Foundry ledger." Rowan entered through the western doors. Behind him came the royal smith. Callista stared at the smith. He would not look at her. Rowan placed a ledger on the altar. "We recovered it from the men transporting Lady Serena and Lyra back to the capital." Dorian opened it. "Payment for royal silver. Moonroot. Private delivery. Callista Valles sale." The smith bowed his head. She ordered the replacement fang. Callista's voice sharpened. "You were paid to say that." "No." Serena stepped closer to her aunt. "You paid him not to." Callista looked at her. Something broke between them. Not love. Ownership. Serena reached into her sleeve and removed the tonic vial. "You gave me this every morning for 3 months." Lyra took it. Memory root. Enough to blur scent, recall, and fragments of conversation. A wave of whispers rose. Callista's calm finally cracked. "I was protecting you." Serena's face hardened. "You were preparing me for what you were born to become." "No." Serena looked around the Moon Hall. "I was born to become myself." Ash moved forward. The royal wolf had been silent until then. Lyra lowered the ceremonial blade. Ash sniffed it. His hackles rose instantly. A snarl rolled from his chest. The wolf had reacted to the crown. Now the blade. Same contamination. Sam blot. Callista saw the room turning against her, so she stopped pretending. "You think this kingdom is clean because a wolf chooses whom to trust. Your father stripped Housevale from succession. Your laws gave Alpha Blood everything and called it order." She looked at Dorian. "I did what your family has done for generations. I used the system." Dorian's bleeding hand curled. "And murdered to control it. I corrected it." Callista lifted 2 fingers. 3 guards near the eastern gallery drew their swords. Rowan shouted, "Steelrang." 1 traitor rushed Dorian. Lyra saw the blade before he did. She seized the ceremonial cloth, wrapped it around Dorian's poisoned hand, and pulled him backward. Ash hit the attacker from the side. Serena screamed a warning toward the loyal guards. Rowan drove another traitor to the floor. Within moments, the rebellion ended as suddenly as it began. Callista stood alone. Dorian faced the court. Lady Callista Vale is under arrest. Then he looked at Lyra and did something no one expected. He turned back to the gathered pack lords. I accused an innocent woman twice. I trusted evidence without asking who controlled it. He removed the moon crown from the altar. The Emergency Succession Act is suspended effective now. The Luna binding is cancelled. An independent inquiry will review every office involved in this conspiracy. Several lords protested. Dorian did not flinch. If admitting my failure weakens this crown, then it was weaker than I believed. Lyra stared at him. This was not an apology spoken in private. It cost him something. Authority, pride, certainty. Callista looked at Serena one final time. Serena did not move toward her. That was the defeat Callista finally understood. The guards took her away. Dorian turned to Lyra. Blood still marked his hand. This time he did not command her. He simply asked, "What happens next?" Lyra looked at the broken crown, the blackened test dish, and Serena standing free beside her. "Now," she said, "we make sure the truth survives us." 3 weeks later, the moon crown was gone from the altar. Not hidden. Removed. Dorian ordered it locked inside the royal archive until every ritual connected to it could be reviewed. The Emergency Succession Act was repealed by full council vote. 2 officials who had accepted Callista's money were stripped of office. 3 guards were imprisoned. Master Corvin survived the inquiry, though he lost control of the royal apothecary after investigators proved he had allowed searches and evidence handling without witnesses. High Seer Eveline confessed something smaller, but important. She had seen a fracture in the moon crown a week before Serena's choosing. She had hidden it, not because she was part of Callista's conspiracy, but because delaying the ritual might have caused panic among the packs. Dorian did not excuse her. Lyra did not condemn her. That mattered. Not every failure had come from evil. Some had come from fear. Some from pride. Some from people convincing themselves that hiding one truth would protect everyone from a larger disaster. Callista's trial lasted 6 days. She never begged. She admitted enough to make denial useless, and defended enough to remind everyone that she still believed she had acted for the kingdom. Serena attended only once, when Callista looked at her and said, "Everything I did was to make you powerful." Serena answered quietly, "You never taught me power. You taught me obedience." Then she walked out. A month later, Serena refused every proposal to restore the Luna choosing. Instead, she accepted a new position as Moon Envoy, representing the crown in disputes between rival packs. For once, the choice was hers. Lyra received a different appointment, Royal Apothecary and Oathkeeper. The title gave her authority to inspect every substance, weapon, crown, ceremonial tool, and binding compound used in royal rites. No ritual could proceed without her seal. The Omega Girl, once searched without consent, now had the legal power to stop a king's ceremony. Some nobles hated that. Lyra considered it an encouraging sign. She was organizing fresh winter mint in the Eastern Apothecary when Dorian came to see her. No guards, no council, no royal crown. Ash entered first and dropped heavily beside the open door. Dorian carried a small wooden box. Lyra looked at it. "If that contains another suspicious vial, I'm leaving." His mouth moved, almost a smile. "I was hoping you might stay." "That depends." "On what you're about to ask." He placed the box on her work table. Inside lay a simple silver pendant. At its center was a familiar shape, the broken fang Ash had torn from the moon crown. Lyra touched it with one finger. You kept it. I had it cleaned. Very romantic. I was told poison residue damages the mood. She laughed before she could stop herself. Dorian watched her, and something in his face softened. This was the first piece of evidence I refused to understand. Lyra looked at him. I saw what I expected to see. A poisoned Luna. A vial in an Omega's satchel. A simple answer. And then? My wolf had better judgment. Ash lifted his head. Lyra smiled. Dorian continued. I cannot change what I did to you. No, I can change the system that allowed me to do it. You started. He nodded, then pushed the pendant toward her. Is this an apology? She asked. No. That surprised her. The apology was changing what I did wrong. His voice lowered. This is something else. Lyra waited. Dorian, Alpha King of the Northern Pax, the man who had ordered her chain before hundreds of witnesses, did not command. He did not claim. He did not speak of destiny. He simply asked, May I stay? Lyra looked at the pendant, at Ash, sleeping in the sunlight, at the man standing before her without a crown between them. Then she held out her hand. Dorian took it. Later that afternoon, they crossed the Grand Moon Hall together. The old altar stood empty. No Luna waited beneath a crown. No Omega stood invisible at the edge. Lyra walked beside the Alpha King, not behind him. And when Ash followed them into the light, the broken silver fang rested against her heart.